The way we're going to have this is it's going to be, as usual, a presentation followed by a discussion. And today is a very short presentation, so we're going to have a bit of discussion as we go along. So please keep your mics open whenever you all want to have a question, and just go ahead and ask the question because I'm going to be pausing in between today. Right. So today's webinar is on Sidemount. And again, for those who, most of you all over here know me, so I'm just going to gloss through this. I've been teaching Sidemount since 2014, and I have pretty much experience in both steel tanks and aluminium, which we will discuss as we go ahead as to why steel and why aluminium. So we're going to cover side mount in this format. There's going to be a brief introduction, history, benefits and drawbacks, the use of side mount, styles, and way ahead for anybody interested. And if you have questions, we'll take it maybe in between as we go, or afterwards as we finish. So side mount started with the idea of being used for caves and cave diving, and has gradually moved on to it being available for recreational diving as well as technical open water diving and advanced rec. And so basically what it is the cylinders are mounted on the side of the diver, and it uses a purpose-built harness or a hybrid harness, which can be used for both back mount and side mount as well. You need to be at least an open water diver for to start side mount training, and it's generally 3 or more tanks used for technical side mount dives or stage side mount dives, but otherwise only 2. And the basic course is depends upon agency to agency, but ideally around 2 to 3 dives for basic side mount and 3 to 5 dives for technical side mount. And PADI requires you to be an advanced open water diver plus 30 dives as experience before you start technical side mount. We'll see the standards as we go ahead further. And so, like I said, the whole concept was that it was used for cave and cave exploration, and therefore the primary use was in the 1960s by the UK Cave Diving Group. And so the CDG used harnesses to get into tiny restricted places inside caves, and for what should I say, maneuvering through sumps. And it was also very big in France in the initial time of cave diving. And what happened was that these were all homemade rigs. These were all just a harness with maybe a tire tube, or in some cases uh, milk bottles and milk jugs, which were used for buoyancy. And most of them were primarily used, side mount primarily was used for navigating through dry passage, and therefore you had smaller tanks clipped onto the side, which the diver could take and carry through the dry sump and then move through a wet sump and continue going through the caves. And Dive and Lamar Heights in Florida then uh, took took what the UK side mount divers were doing, and they developed the first commercial side mount system, which still is being constantly updated and upgraded as we speak. And then side mount really turned mainstream in 2000 with this explosion, so to say, in Mexico. And we have different styles of side mount, which we will talk about as we reach that portion. But it's interesting to note how most of the divers have moved from place A to place B, basically from UK or Europe, and moved to Mexico, and that style has shifted. People in Florida have continued to maintain a particular style and dive that system. So, any questions? Any questions so far? Okay, so we'll go ahead. So yeah, so I mean the main idea was had and always has been to go into restrictive passages, tiny passages where twin set or a back mounted doubles would be difficult to pass through. So the main benefits of side mount has always been redundancy. You have two independent regulators on two independent tanks, and connected to your side, which you can always see the gauges without having to pick up anything. You can always monitor your valves and see that they're not getting damaged. Both your regulators are safe under your armpits. I mean, that's how it should be. And so it's much safer. And then it's a very narrow profile where it's just your body size and the size of the cylinders. Of course, if you use 120s, which is basically steel 120 cubic foot cylinders, those are huge, massive ones, and those will increase your profile a little bit. But the idea is that they are pretty narrow and pretty slim if you use the standard Faber or uh, even if you use the uh, aluminum 80s. The other thing is it's modular. You can add on cylinders as you go ahead. People have been diving with up to 6 cylinders in open water, and 4 cylinder is ideal. Beyond that starts to get a bit, I mean, you're losing out the narrow profile then. But the idea is that you can clip on, clip off, leave the cylinders in the water. There's a great amount of flexibility in donning and doffing. So in case you're on a small boat and you want, you can just clip on the cylinders to a line, drop them in the water, jump into the water, and put them on. And it's very easy for divers with limited shoulder mobility, because you can't access your valves if you have a bad shoulder, if the valves are on the back over your head. But if they're right in front of you, it's much easier. That said, it is still a bit difficult for some people if they have limited strength on setting the bungees and clipping on and clipping off, but it's a lot better than a back mount system. It's also much easier if you're doing long hikes where you need to walk up and down with in gear. In Mexico, for example, when you're walking through the jungle for quite a bit, you have to haul that gear up and down, and it's easier if you're shifting one tank at a time than move a whole twin set all the way. And then up and down, if it's a chimney through a cenote, some of the cenotes are have ladders which are really narrow, and then there are of course more technical ones where you have technical rope work required. So it's very interesting to see how those work. And so the other concept is that that there are a lot of drawbacks to side mount as well. And so the first three can be solved with good training, and if you get a good instructor, they'll be able to definitely sort out your issues of gas management, hose routing, and weight management in terms of where you want to put your hoses. Do you have a turret system on your regulators? And of course, gas management is basically just balancing the gas between your two tanks. The next thing is that some boats, some trips will liveaboards especially will not permit side mount because of the lack of space which they have on the boat, and also the fact that their ladders are a bit coming back on the boat with side mount is a little bit tough, especially if it's a boat which is catering primarily to single tank diving. And then as a diver, it's more expensive if you have to invest in multiple regulators, and the cost of doing that is it's a little bit more expensive. It's not crazily expensive, but it is more expensive. But the benefits far outweigh the drawbacks, and as you can see, the more important drawbacks are just that you choose the right charter. Any questions?
Hi, Vish.
Hi.
Sam here.
Hi, Sam.
Yeah. Hi. Uh, as you know, I'm a newbie in this twin
Yeah.
mount, side mount. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So my doubt regarding the limitation of side mount. I mean, like, is it only restricted? I know it's you can do it on open water also, but when it comes to cave
Hmm.
diving, when you are diving with multiple cylinders, I mean, how does that our decompression stops work? Say like if the cave is first thing, how you determine the depth of the cave the same way we do in the open water?
Yeah, in the sense that if you are doing a cave dive for a already mapped cave, you would have
Hmm.
the
All the
map.
parameters, yeah.
You have the map, so it doesn't matter. If it's a
Yeah.
exploration dive, you have to be. I mean, it's pretty much exploration, right? So you don't know what depth you might hit.
Yeah.
You don't know what it's going to be. So you will take the best gas suited, or you will stop.
Okay.
Let's say you go in a cave 1 kilometer inside, and then it's at 30 meters, and then suddenly you
Yeah.
see a drop down to maybe 50 meters. So what you
Hmm.
would do is you would go to the prudent limit of your gas, or the working limit of your gas, and then maybe
Hmm.
drop a line down, or drop depth gauge, or a computer, drop it down and check what
Yeah.
the depth is and bring it back, and then next day go back with the different gas,
Yeah. Yeah. More being more prepared. Yeah.
being more prepared.
So, the safety stop calculation, which as per my personal experience, I have gone till 42 meters. So below 30 meters, we take two safety stops. One at, correct me if I'm wrong, one at 15 meter, then another at 5. Yeah. So even in cave, we do the same thing. I mean,
No,
if
because
suppose we go below.
there's no concept of safety stops anymore once you get into a full cave, because then you're doing decompression. You're qualified enough to be able to do decompression dives. If you're doing
Okay,
so
deco dive. That is
yeah,
prerequisite.
right. No, not it's a prerequisite for full cave, but you can become, so you can do an intro cave course, which is allows you to dive to the limit of your training. So if you are
Okay.
not qualified for deco dives, you just go in for a little while and come back out.
Mm.
You don't
Okay.
exceed your limits. But that
So
said,
there is no concept of safety stop in cave diving.
I mean, it's a concept which is it's if it's a no decompression dive again, when because of the way the cave is built, the profile of the cave is
Hmm.
such that your deepest point might be 30 meters, but you're not spending to. It's more of a multi-level dive than anything else, because you will go
Okay, okay.
down, hit some bottom, then come up. Very few caves are actually complete chimneys where you start off straight down into maybe 30 meters. Some of the Florida caves are like
Okay.
that. Mexico is very shallow. Most of the Mexican caves
Hmm.
are about 8 to 20, 8 to 12 meters deep. So you're at a constant depth, not going up and down or coming back up. It's shallower.
Okay, okay, okay. Understood. So
Okay.
now another question of mine, since as you know, I'm too keen
Mm-hmm.
to especially for cave diving. So when you say tech diving, so cave diving comes under the umbrella of tech diving, or is it just a completely different
It's the
department
same
altogether?
because it's an overhead environment. So when you are
Okay.
talking about an overhead environment, whether it's a ceiling created because of decompression or a ceiling created because of an actual ceiling, it is still going to be a
Okay.
technical
So
environment.
in open water beyond 40 meter, we consider there is that's a ceiling. I
Correct.
mean, okay, 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 okay. Thank you so much for
Right.
this because I was in a crazy dilemma. Like I mean,
Right.
what is tech diving and what is cave diving?
Oh, okay.
So another question, like, what are the
Yeah.
physical? Is it okay if I keep on asking question, or is there someone else who want to ask?
We'll just go ahead with this and then we can continue because your questions are
Okay,
not
okay,
on Sidemount right now.
okay, 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 okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
carry on.
So, yeah. So this is a video. I hope it plays of what um, uh, or what I mean by a restrictive passage. So, okay, so as you saw that video, the whole idea of it being used for restrictive tiny places, and you can see, if, I mean, you saw that if it was a back mount twin set, it would have been pretty difficult for the diver to have maneuvered through that passage. So the primary use has been for cave diving, advanced rec, where you want to get into passages which are narrow enough for only a single diver going through, and then exploration, where you don't know what kind of opening there is going to be and what kind of restrictions you have. Then of course mines and other overhead environment, which could be, you know, just swim through or a coral swim through kind of area, and additional gas on a recreational dive, because recreational side mount has really picked up over the last few years. A lot of divers want to dive side mount recreationally just because it gives them an additional tank to carry. And somebody was talking to me about uh, using an additional tank for diving because they use too much gas, and this would be an ideal system for anybody of that nature. Again, you know, this is a huge passage, so it doesn't look so bad, but yeah, ideally you would want to have side mount in a cave. So we come to the side mount styles now. So the British side mount style, as most of you would know, is basically pretty much tight, smaller harnesses with lift and minimal lift, primarily used for smaller tanks and used for by dry cavers and to negotiate wet sumps in between. So the harnesses were pretty small. The bladders were really small. The air cell was really small, and compact. With maybe they were using about 5 to 6 liter cylinders, not the big ones. And then the North Florida, or primarily the birth of cave diving area, you know, the genesis of the main cave divers, as we say. They use steel cylinders, and steel cylinders are heavy, so they started using bigger bladders, started adapting back-mounted bladders to side mount bladders. The wings changed, the sizes, the shapes of the wings changed, more became more trapezoidal as time passed, and also started using hybrid systems. So most of North Florida also uses hybrid systems, where the top of the wing is bungeed, so it forms a trapezoid or a triangular system on the back. And then the Mexican style is pretty much follows up from Britain, France, and some part of Poland and Czech. They all people from Europe moved to Mexico, and it's just their styles have moved and evolved around the Mexican style of diving, which is again predominantly aluminum tanks, so smaller bladders, lighter systems, and the waters in Mexico are warm, so dry suits are not used predominantly. So again, the bladder has to take care of the buoyancy. And then next, depending upon the tank type. So like I said, if you have steel tanks, it's going to be heavier, and therefore you would need greater wing capacity. In Mexico, or in, you know, most of Asia, where you have aluminum tanks, a smaller bladder is preferred because of the reduced buoyancy or reduced weight considerations that aluminum has. And then you have single tank side mount, so you could use like the SMS 70, SMS 50, or the X Deep Stealth, you know, the really small versions of the Razor and things like that, which you could use on a single tank. Again, the styles of side mount basically also evolve around and revolve around the harness, the kind of harness, whether you want an H harness, which is basically shaped like an H across your chest, or a standard harness, which is like a regular uh, backpack harness. And then you have a bungee system, whether it's a loop bungee, it's a straight bungee, or a ring bungee. All these three are different bungees systems. It's basically just the bungee cord that you use to clip your tank on and keep it secure around the neck, which are just different ways of doing it. when you do a course on side mount, your instructor will show you all the various modes and figure out which is the best harness for you, which is the best bungee system, uh, then weight, where you want to carry your weights, whether it's on the harness, on the top of the harness, clipped on, or ditchable weights. Then whether you need a butt plate or not. Generally, butt plates are used for steel tanks, because most of the aluminum tanks are clipped onto the waist and then move down as you dive, as it gets lighter with getting empty. And then you also have the air cell. So basically, how the wing is built, whether it has a hard cover on top, whether it's a soft cover, uh, sizes, inflator hose routing, whether it's over the shoulder, under the armpit, dump valve position, whether you have one on the top of the bladder over your neck or on the side on your butt uh, position, all these various systems. So the way ahead would be a side mount course. So you have two side mount variations. One is the open water side mount, basic side mount course, which generally takes 3 days. And when I say 3 days, it's important to understand that you have at least 2 days of class, but the third day is always extra day, which you could maybe go for fun dives after you're certified, but at least keep it in hand where you would be able to spend some time just getting to know your kit better. And then same for tech side mount is 5 days, or just 2 days if you're already side mount certified. And this is the equivalencies and the requirements, the prerequisites for various agencies. I teach side mount with all these three agencies, and anybody who signs up is more than welcome in whichever agency you want to train with. And yep, the next step is technical diving, whenever anybody's interested. And we can now take questions. Yep, we're open for questions now.
Hey Vish, it's Kush.
Hi Kush,
Can you hear?
how are you doing? Yeah.
Good. Vish, do you have pictures of the different styles of harnesses? The British, the Florida, the Mexico. Are they
Yeah.
different? Do they actually make a difference in balance and stuff like that?
I purposely didn't put it up on this presentation because that's more something which I would do in a class.
Okay, fair enough.
But yes, they do make a big difference because you have, I mean, if you've seen the Razor, if you've seen the X Deep, you've
Yeah,
seen my
I use
SMS.
Razor, so I'm just curious about the others.
So you've seen the old Scuba Pro one. I mean, the only one which Scuba Pro makes, right? The one with a
Yes.
hard plate and just a balloon on top. So
Yeah.
that's one system, right? They started it, and then you have the SMS 75, which I use, which is a complete hard top. The wing is under the hard top.
Okay.
Then you have the SMS 50, which Ajay has, which is a complete soft plate. The
Yeah.
wing is on the harness itself,
Yeah.
which is similar to the X Deep. Now, what the X
Right.
Deep has done, the X Deep has gone ahead and put a hard backing, like a rectangle of hard backing over the wing, on where you would consider a abrasion point.
Okay.
Uh, the Razor and the X Deep have three separate different systems. You have the tech, you have the stealth, and you have the basic one, which is just a pouch across your waist.
Correct.
So based upon what kind of diving you're doing, in terms of, if I was doing exploration and crawling through the systems, I would probably use what I have. I mean, I have the SMS 75 and I have the
75.
Dive Right Nomad XT,
Yeah.
which are both completely rugged with which will not rip. Basically, the rock inside the cave will not rip my
Bladder.
bladder. And
Yeah.
I've had problems with the Scuba Pro bladder, which was ripped. I don't know whether it was done on purpose by somebody, or it was around the same time when Ajay also had some issues with his bladder, and there were two bladders in the shop which had holes in them. So we don't know
Yeah.
whether somebody did it or it just happened on the wreck. but that's around the time we were both diving. So yeah, I mean, depending upon what kind of system you want to use. And now the Hollis Katana 2 uh, is similar to a similar design of the XD, but a more advanced version. I mean, it's
Fair
got
enough.
a lot more going on for it in terms of where the hose is routed and the dump valve is over the head rather than, the X Deep has it over the butt.
Yeah.
So again, it's a bit of a understanding of how these systems work. I mean, you already know how trim would work when you shift.
Yeah.
So when you're ascending and you want to dump gas, I wouldn't want to put my butt up at that point in time and take gas out. I would rather have the dump valve on the over the neck, which would be just easier to dump with.
Sure.
And then running the line, which is for your dump, the dump pull. I mean,
Yeah.
you can route it in different ways, right? You can put a plastic tubing and run it across your chest. You can run it over your shoulder, whichever makes it convenient for you. So it's
Sure.
just those ways. But yeah, I mean, the reason why I didn't put pictures here is one, because I don't want to put brand specific information on this slide, and two, that's more for a class than
Fair
anything.
enough. Got it. Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Sam has disappeared. Any more questions?
I have one more question.
Sure, go ahead.
There is an increasing and growing trend of using side mount in open water.
Yes.
And one obvious reason is the access to excess gas if you're a heavy user, a heavy breather. But are there any other pros that one can come across as to why one would use it in open water versus twin set?
Oh yeah, there are many actually, not just one. Just to give you an example, if you are uh, I mean, somebody like me who has a back issue and would not want to carry a twin set and hobble along a small boat like the Goa ones and
Yeah.
get into the water, if we have, like, somebody from the boat or any of the other dive masters are willing to help, you just clip on the tanks in the water.
Yeah.
You just have somebody pass the tanks to you and you clip them on. Or even if there's nobody to help you, you could actually clip the tanks onto a john line
Line.
kind of thing, drop it into
Yeah.
the water over the side, because this you're not diving in crazy current. So you just want to clip on and get in. Or even if you drop it down to maybe 5 meters and get into the water with a single tank, and then clip on the rest, it's much easier than trying to. And Sanjay will vouch for the fact that he's seen us in the last course, having a student and I both try to figure out how to get into the water with a twin set, and then having a problem with the twin set, and then having to climb back on the boat with the twin set or without the twin set. It's just an hour of time just gone if you have to readjust anything. Whereas in a side mount system, you get into the water, you have a problem, you ask for a screwdriver, you change the length of the cam band, or change the bolt right there. It's that simple.
Right.
So that's the biggest thing from a boat like that. And the other thing is that even if you are limited mobility, you don't want to slip with everything on. I mean, jumping with two tanks on the boat, if you just slip, I mean, just imagine the kind of damage that's possible. So that's those are the main advantages in terms of side mount diving for recreational diving. Of course, that said, a lot of people are moving on to recreational side mount with the idea of eventually going technical and using the knowledge that they get in a recreational side mount course to uh, build up on eventually becoming technical divers.
Sure. Thanks, sir.
So that's the. Uh, any questions further?
Yeah, Wish, Varun, yeah. I
Hi,
just want,
Varun.
sorry for joining late.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask, so maybe you have already answered it. As a photographer, I mean, carrying a big camera and all, so would you recommend the side mount setup? Because we already have the camera and the arms, so wouldn't it be better to carry a, twin set or something like that? Or how does it work as a photographer? How does it work if you have, side going side mount?
So one of the things that back mount divers have a problem with in a twin set is that whenever you look up, I mean, if you're looking up like this, even especially when you're trying to take a photograph, right? You're looking up. Your
Right.
body is in trim, but you're looking up. So you've got the valves at the back of your head, and there are
Mm-hmm.
chances if you set it correctly, the valve should be just at the back of your head. Kush, correct me if I'm wrong
Okay.
here. Uh, Kush?
No, you're absolutely right here.
Yeah. So when you have that system of your back mount valves at the back, and you look up, you're going to be constantly having some kind of what should I say, chance of it touching your head or hurting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you have your tanks, if you're in perfect trim and you have your tanks and side mount on your side, you have the same amount of gas as you have in your back mount. Number one. Number two, the valves are safely under your armpits. And three, if you can put your regulators sorry your gauges in the way, for example, the way I put them is a
Mm-hmm.
lollipop system where they are pointing upwards and they're constantly in front of you, so you don't have to
Okay.
reach over, pull out your SPG and look at how much gas you have. While you're in the frame itself, you just have to kind of look down, look just at your wrist, because it's right here, so it's going to be popping up here in front of you, so you can actually see the gauges as you're working. So monitoring gas becomes easier. You don't have, and you have your computers on your wrist, so you're just looking at your computer, looking at your gauge, looking at your frame. It's that simple. And of course you can use multiple cylinders. You can use two, you can use four if you're just
Mm-hmm.
on a shallow dive taking pictures. uh, of course, once you are getting into technical diving and you're taking photographs, I would suggest having a buddy who's not taking pictures, who is your like what in most cases when you have a photographer or a researcher doing taking readings and doing stuff, you have
Mm-hmm.
somebody, you have a guardian system. It's not called a
Right.
buddy
Right.
system, it's a guardian system. So the person taking pictures or taking samples or doing research is somebody who is preoccupied with something else, and therefore you don't expect them to have the situational awareness to to monitor their bottom time and their what do you call decompression time or their gas. So the going to be monitoring and maintaining the guardian is what is not taking pictures. It's just monitoring bottom time and gas, so we'll constantly keep you aware of what's going on. So
Okay.
it's a very good system
So the side mount
for
doesn't
photographers.
interfere with your movement
Not at all,
while taking
not at all,
photos, right?
not
Yeah.
at all.
Okay.
And you can route it the way you want. I mean, you don't have to have it right in your armpits. You can move it slightly below
Mm-hmm.
so that it gives you full freedom of movement. And just give me a second, let me just put this picture up. So if you see this picture right now,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a 4 tank side mount, and you see my hands are completely free.
Right. Right. Perfect.
Okay, and this is not the best streamline because one of the stages is hanging way too below. So
Mm-hmm.
but to give you an idea, this is how comfortable it is.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks.
All right, any more questions? We've had a really short uh, series today, so which is good. I don't want to drone on too much about stuff. The whole idea is to get people figuring out what side mount actually is rather than run a full side mount class. If there are no more questions, I'm going to stop the recording, and then we go ahead with uh, just a general chat if anybody wants. That okay? Can I have a vote?
Thanks, Vish. It's been a good one.